Capcom. Perhaps you know them from their hit series Street Fighter or Devil May Cry, or perhaps the finer classics like Mega Man on NES or Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube or Resident Evil 4 on the... Yep, see, Capcom has this beautiful ability to just make a game and then continually release it on every future platform known to man, and that's not me complaining. What they are doing here is helping the game stay accessible and relevant. Why is Street Fighter 2 hailed as one of the greatest fighting games of all time? Because Capcom has ensured that every generation has been able to play it, and they like it. And even though its many versions are often overlooked, Ace Attorney is no exception to that rule. Where did you first play Ace Attorney? For me, it was here, but I know others who played it here, some very unfortunate souls who started here.
Okay, that was actually pretty fun.
In any case, there's nothing that proves these games are more timeless and enjoyable for all than Capcom's continued release of the original trilogy. So, for a long time, God forbid you played this series, enjoyed it, and actually wanted to play the rest of it, you had the extracurriculars behind the DS, the 3DS, the Pacific Ocean. But in the Nintendo Direct this past June, the Ace Attorney Investigations Combo Pack was announced, making every Ace Attorney game ever officially localized and available on all modern platforms except for the Great Ace Attorney still doesn't have an Xbox port. All except for one. Gee, stuck on the 3DS, does that remind you of someone? The Professor Layton series is also pre-resurrection as of last year. After Level 5 closed down their western branch, a new game was the last thing anyone expected, but one the series drastically needed because of all the games they could possibly put on Switch. Einstein defined insanity as trying the same thing twice and expecting different results. So, at least Level 5's not crazy. Some would argue the most sane thing would be releasing the original 3 games onto the Switch as well as the other versions locked to the 3DS and demanding a kidney in exchange for ownership, because for some reason, they haven't done that. Even though there's a new game coming out and newer generations are entirely disconnected from accessing this franchise, and those poor people who are interested in it and only own a Switch are gonna bow. Hello, I am single console owner, and this is my single console. Boy, that new Professor Layton game looks good, but I haven't played any of the other games. Let's see what's available on my single console. Ah, here is a Layton game. I shall start with this one. Wow, this sucks, dog. Ooh! I am convinced one of the paths forward for getting classic Professor Layton on Switch is through Capcom. On their quest to bring every Ace Attorney back, they will eventually approach Level 5 and say, psst, 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 psst. Hey, where's my child support motherfucker? The crossover is an invention of and for fans, taking two pieces of media and slapping them together to witness characters interact in different worlds with different laws. Especially for video games, it's a good chance to experiment with alternate mechanics. At times, it has been purely whack, seeming to just be based on what if, and other times it is the perfect union of ideas that brings together a collection of people who are always destined to get along. This is absolutely the case with Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney. In theory, while these two franchises marrying one another makes total sense, it also happens to be these two franchises, a crossover of both it makes sense and also purely whack, and the result is the most beautifully fused together what the fuck, what were they trying to do game quite possibly ever. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so back. Now, I've talked a lot about Professor Layton on this channel. I'm up to the 4th game in the retrospective series, but the only time I've ever talked about Ace Attorney was in those videos and my top 3DS games video. So real quick, let me rank the prosecutors. Great, now that we're through that, Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney. Revealed in a 2010 trailer that I swear to you I've rewatched like 100+ times. I just really like the music. The all-knowing professor goes up against the pretty decent defense attorney in a strange new land.
It's spooky.
So much ended up changing from this trailer to the final game, and maybe that's because I don't know. It took 4 years in North America. It was 2 for Japan, but still. Who the f are these people? That means this game just turned a decade old in America, so we're perfectly ripe for the anniversary retrospective, which I'm sure will definitely totally come out on time, as all Voyant videos about Professor Layton factually do. I do love this game and all of its eccentricities. I remember going at launch to buy it my freshman year in college. Aging is great, dude. Make sure you steer clear of high fructose corn syrup and since Layton games had been coming out steady at the time, this was actually one of 2 in 2014, I was then much more excited to see the Ace Attorney side of this game. Nowadays, after the level 5 drought, I'd be much more excited to revisit the Layton aspect of this game if, and only if, I had not been replaying through the series and studying the media for like 2 years now. But that's led me to a oh my god, a crossover, where I'm now excited to pick this game apart and see how it all happened. Shall we? To first understand, though, how these characters work together, we gotta understand how they came together, and the answer is, as you could completely guess, love. Calling the impact of the Ace Attorney series anything other than huge would be a lie. Capcom didn't know what they were about to do to the visual novel point-and-click genre in 2001, but apparently something must have worked between the game's many sequels, ports, spin-offs, references in other games, adaptations, merch, and overwhelmingly positive reception. Let me tell you how you know you've really made it, though. Plagiarism. Any great creation comes to inspire others, and soon we'd see the rise of Phoenix likes. Not really, that's not a real segment of this video. I'm sure many have found themselves inspired by the defense attorney, but one such person was level 5 CEO Akihiro Hino, who, when creating his new character, Professor Layton, pulled a lot of inspiration from Phoenix Wright because Hino absolutely adored the Ace Attorney series. Hino described building his character around overcoming the worst parts of Wright. That makes sense. Phoenix is anxious and unsure of himself at times, but he discovers the truth along the way and fights confidently onward, where the professor is always very calm and collected and pretty much knows what's going on much earlier than he reveals in the plot. But those of you who've played will know that the best moments in Layton are when he does not understand, but that aside, a whole lot of success later, Hino eventually reaches out to Shu Takumi, and they say, let's go all the way, and they get their teams together to build Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney on the Nintendo 3DS. So while this is an official game made by both series creators, I'm not necessarily wrong when I say it feels like a fan game. And I think if you approach it like that, your favorite video game creator's favorite video game creator, you realize it's made from pure passion and kind of start to look the other way when the weird moments show up, which, if you can't tell yet, there's going to be a lot. Normally when I do these types of videos, I like to go very play-by-play, so it's kind of equal parts synopsis as commentary. But not only is this game insanely long, and that doesn't sound super fun to like transcribe it all, I'm gonna do the rare thing here and just assume you're familiar with the source material so that we can focus on what really matters, the bizarre nature of it all. Don't worry, I'll still lightly go over things for memory's sake, but if you haven't played this game, please play it before watching the rest of this video because I'm gonna spoil in this game. It's honestly a crazy but very enjoyable ride. Also, concerning the length of this game, I wanted this video out in a timely manner, which is already a tough ask for Voyant normally. So I replayed it on my actual 3DS to get through it faster, and the footage here on screen is gonna be mostly from a channel called Crystal Long Plays, so go give them a like and a yo! Thanks. Now, this game's intro cutscene has 2 people in a car being followed by witches, and when the car ultimately crashes, the man tells the girl to leave him behind and find another certain man. Then Inspector Chelmy pulls up and says, "What the blazes?" The basic premise here is that this girl, Espella, is a refugee seeking the help of Professor Layton, who we know will never ever fail any female occupying a daughter-like custodial position. And from here, the camera pans way up to flash over to
Oh, look, it's really London. Come on, Nick, take a look.
Listen, I'm not biased, but we hadn't seen these 2 characters together in a decade with Maya's theme. And even 10 years later, she's been around like once. It's like seeing childhood friends again, friends that are flying into London since they're here visiting on the Legal League of Legends or something. Video game crossovers have the very fun problem of format, whose will be used, and how will it encompass the other parts. This was weighing on a lot of people's minds after the announcement, especially because it was an upcoming 3DS game when the 3DS wasn't out yet. Is it going to introduce something totally new? Is one going to adopt the other? Or is it just gonna be 50-50 of both games? Most people will say it's the last one. The chapters are split 50-50. Layton in the streets, Phoenix with the deets. But if you ask me, I'd make a personal argument for the second one, an adoption. I know the game is supposed to be set up like it's Professor Layton and Phoenix Wright, but it's really more of a Professor Layton game featuring Phoenix Wright, as he has the far stronger role in the much wackier story here. There's going to be a lot of examples of this in the playthrough, but first, as Espella reaches Layton's office and sets the stage for the story, she hands it, oh, you Professor Layton fans may want to sit down for this one. She hands him a letter. The letter says, "Come to a strange town, not on any map, and investigate." I call this Persona Q syndrome. Normal people call it, or they probably don't call it anything because they have lives, a crossover phenomenon where the characters and their backgrounds are boiled down to the most general extent of themselves, likely because now is not a good time to start branching out. So you get a real one-dimensional view of the typical Layton endeavor. Professor Layton gets a note inviting him to a strange place to learn about strange things. Sure. Phoenix Wright gets wrapped up in the first case, which seems like an isolated incident, but is in fact connected to a much larger story. It's nothing you haven't heard of for these characters, which is why the focus here will be the relationship between the characters. But even the gameplay to this point is nothing crazy. Phoenix Wright is entirely text-based in the courtroom. Professor Layton does puzzles, navigates, and talks to. I think you understand, though. The game is a Professor Layton game in the Professor Layton chapters, and it is a Phoenix Wright game in the Phoenix Wright chapters, and at best, you'll see the characters solve puzzles or participate in trial who normally do not. Regardless, the story is tackled from these two angles. After Espella is taken by the motherfucker from Monster Rancher,
Professor, what was that?
That, Luke, was a witch.
Gee, I wonder what this game is gonna be about.
Witches.
Witches?
Witch.
Witches?
Witches.
Witches?
Witches. That, Luke, was a
Bitch!
The plot then switches over to Phoenix so he can have an introductory meeting with Espella and players can oh, yes! Oh my goodness, yes. Tell me the autopsy's been updated. Look at the animation for Flinch being shocked. I love how clearly old they made him with his gelatinous recoil. Now, even though a lot happens in this trial, it's like an hour and a half long, none of it is really significant to the overall plot. It more so acts as a tutorial. The case is absolutely easy. I say as a seasoned veteran, there are times this game will get all dramatic and be like, uh-oh, now what? But you have just been doing this so long, you figured out the problem long before the characters. This game in particular, that's like every cross-examination and every puzzle, and I'll go deeper on this in a little bit, but they wanted to make it easy for both sides. That, I understand. Nobody who wants to play an Ace Attorney game should bust a nut over some stupid math problem or sliding block puzzle, and no one from the Layton side wants to perfectly reimagine crime scenes so that they can present specific evidence on specific statements. This game dials down the difficulty a lot so that at best people can get what they came for and maybe become interested, and that makes perfect marketing sense. For drawing in crowds, everybody wins, except for the fans who came here having played both. Shit, Capcom and Level 5 already got our money. Enjoy your puzzle where you figure out how to count numbers, dickhead. Still, I'm impressed how locked in you can get as these characters, and I think that's Ace Attorney's strong suit. Even if I know the mystery, even if I can spell out the contradiction before the story presents me the chance, like, I f***ing hate these lying little shits. And that's something you carry no matter the difficulty for Ace Attorney. Extremely well written. Will Wheaton. It feels as simplified on this side of things as it does for Layton, like how we're back to exclamation points for health instead of the bar. We have Maya as our assistant. And another little neat detail, when the Ace Attorney characters talk, it sounds like compared to when the Layton characters talk, which is the animations are humorous and expressive, and I think it's very obvious that, especially for this being the first game, Ace Attorney had a much better transition into 3D than...
You know,
Professor Layton,
since you had that
3DS.
there's something different about you.
I I mean, well, they couldn't just show up to the 3DS and be... The 2D character portraits had a bit more character, yeah, but this is developed at the same time as the graphical pissing contest. The 3DS just needed to win, and this is a better conversation, more fit for Miracle Mass, so I'm just gonna... But one thing I will say about the 3D renders is that because they are more work, it feels like there's less characters, at least for a Professor Layton game. It's about on par with Ace Attorney. This becomes especially noticeable when you get to Labyrinthia. But before we go ahead and do all that, I haven't forgotten about the concept of intermissions, aka this is a long video, and it's nice to have a break here or there, so why don't we go ahead and do this which are you more like, Professor Layton or Phoenix Wright quiz from 2014, because they were having a great time promoting this game. This is a nice little website. Look at, they got the animations, they got music if you want the music. This is nice, I could get used to this. All right, are you more like Professor Layton or Phoenix Wright? Now, this is a bad description of both of them, but let's go ahead and do it. Dang, your flight took off late and you may not make your connection. What do? Draw the shortest path between your landing. This is goofy. All right, so I clicked a bunch of random answers. This is just puzzles from the game at this point, man. You're just having me play the game. You made the cut, counselor. Get ready to assist the Ace Attorney. All right, so who am I? Because the image is broken. I can't tell from this description. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Now, Labyrinthia. Labyrinthia is a strange place, a medieval town, not seen on any map, filled with witches and magic and a prophet who writes the reality and is worshipped like a god. I'm sure there's lots of irony about two characters from different universes getting sucked into a storybook together where someone else writes the future for them. It in fact might be the most meta commentary I can think of for the series, but for the intents and purposes of this crossover, it works. Good visuals, good music. Professor Layton chapters involve investigating the town, while Phoenix defends those accused of being witches, bringing each slowly closer to the truth. We will be here for the rest of the game, and it is here where the madness of Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright truly begins to take hold. In terms of atmosphere, this is the most fish out of water you can get for Ace Attorney at the time. As for Professor Layton, unmarked town stuck in the past, that's his main and smash. But obviously, magic and witches are not rules either of these series play by. That's accounting for as crazy as some of the Professor Layton explanations can be, and the fact that spirit mediums are a core part of Ace Attorney. Both of these series have to, at some point, honor real-world logic, and they really do their best. And that is what makes this game so hilariously fun and bizarre, as we'll discuss more with the unfolding plot. But even to this point, you have my full committed attention, Mr. Hino, Mr. Takumi. That whole sequence back there with the Spella getting captured, and each time someone gets sucked into a book, that Harry Potter-ass scene of the car with the hand, like, dude, what you got? Nanomachines, son? It was all a dream. I used to read Layton magazine. Nah, I'm the one having too much fun. Actually, one may make the argument that one of these two particular series had such a good time in the medieval setting that they went on to create more games that recycled the same system this one had, but could avoid the whole magic context and instead just relish in the fact that it's old. And the same is true for Professor Layton, just coming off Miracle Mask and moving to the clearly most fantasy-inspired adventure yet, Azran Legacy. You realize that this game isn't just about union, it's a manifestation of ideas. And for both series after this point to pull so much from this game, for this to substantially shape the directions they're going to take for their main series, just honestly makes it even more weird. As I said earlier, the format of this gameplay doesn't really do anything different for either franchise. There's no real innovation aside from altering between perspective and game style. And when you think of this game as inspiration, it's funny. I know it's largely to do with setting and not mechanics, but consider Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright is really safe, easy, and I mean it's like, you need to have a written plan in order to fail at this game. From the Professor Layton side, the crossover has the lowest amount of puzzles featured in the series, a mere 70, which isn't to say there's not a lot of content given the other half of the game is Ace Attorney, but for it coming out after the two very beefy 3DS titles in North America, and also to not include minigames, that's no way to live. All the puzzles are pretty simple. Most have animations now that help to visualize the problem, which is a good thing, Thank you, 3DS. You're not going to be running into any puzzle that makes you stare at the screen until your battery dies. Not until at least the post-game. And there's no puzzle gates, which is fine. That would be like making a door out of whipped cream. From the Ace Attorney side, this game does introduce some things, namely a brand new gimmick called, I guess, Pursuit, otherwise known as Group Testimony, which again was later brought back in the Great Ace Attorney, but anyway. Simultaneous testimonies are given from different people, and some may react to hearing others. All you have to do is watch for when they appear, move over to them after pressing, and hit the question button. I know, it's so incredibly difficult, oh my god. No psych locks, no bracelet. Actually, now you can use the hint coins you found in trial, which most of the time will just give you the answer. Even though there's no more than 8 pieces of evidence in any one case? Alright. But you can present spells and profiles, and the biggest piece of difficulty the Ace Attorney side holds over Professor Layton is the fact that you can actually fail during these segments and be forced to do some of it over. Also, live incineration. Yeah. That's fun. Burning alive included, the difficulty level of this game doesn't even really make sense in the story. Like, Phoenix is struggling in this first trial. He's having a very hard time using modern logic in an outdated court. And it's really only thanks to the professor that he's able to get anywhere. This is why I always thought the game was developed by Level 5 with permission from Capcom, because Phoenix totally gets bailed out by Layton so many times, like the first time in which Trial won, the second time in which Trial won, the third time in which Trial won, the fourth time in which Trial won. Why the f is Phoenix even here? If the professor knows everything, just let him cook. Playing this as a kid, being equally as big a fan of both series, I wasn't irritated because it seemed like the game was having the professor outshine Phoenix Wright. I was getting mad because every single time he did, you would hear bum 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 bum. Layton goes to see the storyteller. Bum 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 bum. Layton saves Maya in the woods. Bum 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 bum. Layton lost all his money in a crypto scheme. Bum bum bum. Every time the professor is brought into view, this game plays his theme, and it takes from the strength. I made a joke about this in the rankings video, but I didn't realize how bad it was before replaying, or how bad this game has a music reuse problem in general, especially for big moments, but maybe that's because the big moments drag so freaking long. Play something else and save this for the professor's best moments, of which he has so many. And yes, only him. Phoenix Wright's big moments include holding his fist up to Barnum, getting called a wussy at the bar, when he remembers he's not a baker in court. That one was actually pretty cool. Okay. By the time we get to the second witch trial, you can see what the developer's aim was here. Professor Layton helped a lot in the first trial, but is now missing for the second. He is in fact made of gold. I could have told you that. Professor Layton is the victim, Maya is the defendant, Luke is a witness, and Phoenix stays where he is. Aiding us is Aspella. You may consider Aspella the 5th main character, as she is the heart of the plot and our tag into Labyrinthia. She's a sweet girl who is doing her best to understand why everything is happening to her, much the same as we. She's cared for by the baker lady, whose name I've totally forgotten, but it's on the screen right now. I have failed miserably in all aspects of content creation and at my job at Jackson Hewitt. Aspella is a rather plain girl, but becomes significantly more captivating as a character when she is accused to be the Great Witch Bazella, aka the root of all suffering in Labyrinthia, and therefore making everyone in the town hate her, and by extension, the people helping her. This shifts the tone a lot, and you feel now more than ever before that the court is biased and rooting for your failure. That's where, opposite us, this game's prosecutor, Inquisitor Barnum, comes in.
Knights of the court, I have but one question for you both. Are you prepared to cross swords?
This guy is a very standard Ace Attorney antagonist. You can either call him misguided or just foolish, but he's not doing a good job discovering the truth. Despite the fact he's got everyone in the court pre-favoring him, all in support as he is the hero who will bring the Great Witch and her defenders to justice. But of course, typical of one in his position, he later somewhat redeems himself and presents the more chivalrous aspects of his profession, and we realize that the opposing prosecutor isn't a bad guy, he's just a human, before kind of just disappearing from the game's big finale. And I do feel bad for Barnum fans because he's so underused with how the game makes him to be this big character, but then he's only around for 2 trials and then just gone. He's replaced by High Inquisitor Darklaw, and I'm just gonna say it. Could you not tell who the bad guy was this whole time? Did you not see it in the first cutscene of her staring at Professor Layton? Did you not know it when she told Phoenix to plead guilty for a Spella in the real world? Did you not know it when you saw the front cover of the game? Lastly, for OCs, the Storyteller, also built up to be a big antagonist. You learn he's a Spella's father, and your Layton Ace Attorney trained brain says, nah, there's something deeper to this guy. But going way back to Hino's comment about how he developed Layton by overcoming the worst parts of Wright, I'd go a step further to say that he actually split Phoenix Wright into two people. The put-together aspects were given to Layton, and the naive side was given to Luke, who, as he has done most of this series, acts as the relatable character window into the world. Most people played these games when they were kids, so having a child along in the story who learns as much from the professor as we do, but also expresses his emotions much more frequently, is easy to identify with. This is something he retains in this game, very specifically in this case, where Layton has become a victim of witchcraft. And interestingly, Luke follows his heart in a way that opposes another main character, becoming a witness. Thus, you may call this part of the game Witch Trial 2, Civil War. And that leaves Maya. I love her because she is just pure help and comic relief, pushing Phoenix's features of dependability further into the spotlight. And this game rewards that by killing her?
Maya!
Help me, Nick!
Estella! Quick, in here!
Stop! You've got to stop!
See, I would have believed it too. This game came out after Dual Destinies and before Spirit of Justice, so you'd think, gee, where the hell has Maya been since 2004? No, she wasn't gunned down outside a nightclub in Miami. She burned to death in 2012. What happens after is we see the diagonal pairing off of characters. Phoenix and Luke will spend some time together, and eventually Maya and Professor Layton. But the game makes sure that everyone has at least a little time together. The beginning of the game keeps things vanilla. Luke and Maya go on cat quests together in Labyrinthia, and the two big boys have time together as well. Each relationship is highlighted in the game to show off group dynamics, and it's very nice. Seeing Phoenix and Luke makes me think of Pearl Fae. Seeing Layton and Maya explore the woods together and talk with the Shades about archaeology, sure, that's fun too. Layton and Phoenix breaking out logistics in court, why he just looks like a guy in a mascot costume when he's right there next to everyone else, man. I don't know. Say what you will about the 3DS graphics, but like, what is this scene? But Voyen, where is the train wreck moment? Where's the moment where this game completely falls apart? Well, don't worry, because such a moment does not exist, but rather, the 8-hour-long third witch trial that serves as the finale for this game. It starts with Barnum getting laid off, and that pretty much wraps up his character. He's just done. And then the most intense battle of them all ensues. Phoenix Wright versus the purple bitch with the horns. Only for her to be replaced mid-trial by Professor Layton? Oh, okay, I get it. So in the first trial, he helps. In the second trial, we have to learn to stand on our own feet. In the third trial, we must now use the strength we've gained to take down our greatest ally. Not really, you also play as him. You control the whole court. What the fuck is happening? The third witch trial breaks down everything. The Great Witch, magic, the storyteller's ability. I do find it funny that this last trial drags for so long, and yet there are still so many unanswered questions, but instead we have fluff like 10 witnesses on the stand, puzzle you cannot complete on the first try. Who is the girl in this photograph? I have no idea, video game, stop asking. Meanwhile, they will literally just pull out any excuse to cover the tracks of the witchcraft, which gets mentioned in like 2 text boxes, and then they go right back to the BS.
Ah!
Darklaw's just disappeared.
She's donned the invisibility robe.
You're so right, Professor Layton. Of course, she's donned the invisibility robe. Magic is blamed on transparencies. Witches are not burned, but turned into shades. Ink causes hallucinations. The groundwater is contaminated and makes people pass out to the sound of pure silver. And there's so much memory wiping going on. Fine. What else? Aspella caused a big fire as a child and was so traumatized, the memories became repressed, and that's when you see the true motivations of the storyteller, that this whole town was fabricated solely as an escape for her and everyone else who signed up to have their memories wiped. I wish they'd wipe my memory of what happens next. Nope, this twist is too much, even for Professor Layton, get ready. So if magic does not exist, how on earth were all the witches wreaking havoc in Labyrinthia? It was done by machines, invisible machines that nobody could see because all the townspeople were hypnotized into thinking they couldn't see pure black. Oh, I'm sorry, are you guys just now seeing that text I had on screen this whole time? You know what? I'll play ball. I'm gonna lose, but I'll play. How did nobody ever bump into any of the machines? Or the bell tower? How did they see clearly through the machine? Did they have machines in London doing all that magic too? Was everyone else in London unable to see the machines? Did they also drink the water in Labyrinthia that makes them pass out to the silver bell? Were they hallucinating because they had ink flying through the air? Bro, what is this, diabolical box? What do I mean when I say this is more of a Professor Layton game than a Phoenix Wright game? I mean the plot twist. It's wildly, unbelievably stupid, and there's even several other plot twists too recycled from other Layton games like Last Spectre, Diabolical Box, even Azran Legacy. If you look at it from the character standpoint, essentially Dark Law and Aspella are mass murderers, but you know, the accidental kind. You can summarize the whole plot as, you need to let go, Aspella, that accident wasn't your fault. I'd also like to point out that this format of storytelling is completely a Professor Layton thing, operating in a faux environment that is suspicious only for you to realize the gimmick right at the very end. That's not really something Ace Attorney does, except after this game in Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice. Both of those games have an ending plot twist that makes you kind of, but not on as big a scale as Professor Layton, rethink the whole game before it. I'm not about to say this game influenced them. Usually though, it's just finding out the big bad of the game. In Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney, we've known the whole time who that was. The big twist being that it was actually her who rung the bell and incidentally killed everyone, but like, okay. It just doesn't really make her any more of a villain than she already was, knowing she was also just a kid and ended up with severe trauma. It actually kind of feels like a cop-out. Without this twist, Aspella would have been the character this game smiles upon despite her mistakes, and the moral would have been the acceptance of your actions even if you spent the whole game horrified by them. To me, this message is far more impactful and bold and true to the Layton series than, it's okay because she actually didn't do it, it was the other girl who we already have reason to dislike, everything is better. It paints Aspella as completely innocent, ending her very bland character arc, and attempts to make Dark Law seem even worse, even though this is the basis of her as a tragic villain. Then the storyteller announces that he's terminal, only to announce that there's also going to be a life-saving drug. Right. The game comes to an end, Barnum drives the boat, and you're telling me that all the people who wanted to reset their lives are just suddenly okay going back to their lives? Is that what this is? Perspective. There's an Edgeworth cameo mid-credits. That's the best part of this game. Here is a Miiverse post from 2014. And that about does it for Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. But you might be wondering, and for those answers, you have to look to the extra episodes and DLC, or just accept there's no answer. This is another reason I don't think cutting up this game's plot would have been fun, and I'm not going to give it that legitimization because I don't think it deserves it. At its core, it's fun, it's zany, it's preposterous, and it's like pretty frickin' funny too. I've been told that the people who played both series before this game are the ones who get the most out of it, and I see the point they're trying to make. This trailer being uploaded in 2010 was what made me sit down with Layton, and by the time it came out 4 years later, I had played all 6 games in the series and fell in love. It introduced me to Professor Layton. For that, I am ever grateful. But also in 2010, a post-Apollo Justice world filled with uncertainty, this was the only game the Ace Attorney series had on the horizon for a long while. Bringing back characters like Maya, and if only for a little bit in the post-game, Edgeworth, that made the wait totally worth it. And the fact that Dual Destinies eventually did release like 1 year prior to this game. I really don't think there's a better way they could have done it though. Bringing together two series like Ace Attorney and Professor Layton, there's bound to be some insanity through it all. Like, let's be honest, the very concept of a crossover insists upon a messy canon, but I'd be lying if I said it doesn't add to the game's charm, and that both of these series telling their audiences something so confidently and expecting us to run with whatever it is signature. So if you don't look at this game as good, or even a game, or even entertainment, then observe it as a monumental piece. One that celebrates two of the most important series that helped to define their genre and create empires on the DS and 3DS. But anyway, let's see, where was I now?